So welcome back. If you ain't heard by now, today is my birthday. And not just my birthday, but the beginning of my new year, 2025. Woohoo! Anywho, I don't normally celebrate my birthday, and obviously I'm here in front of the camera today, and I guess this is a part of celebrating. Um, and then my masks that I made, which was purposely for today. So I made a total of 7 masks, and it was so that I knew I wanted to um, regain my voice. And part of regaining my voice, I have to clear my throat. And there's a lot of things that I've been holding on to, and definitely have healed from a lot of things. The only reason why I'm sharing some of this is because those are the things that it's like I feel like I've been kind of protecting people who have continuously crossed boundaries, continuously have disrespected me and harmed me on some level. And I take ownership that I've allowed that to happen, all for the sake of family and and and, and just wanting family. So yeah, eventually I will show my face, but this is my birthday, so I get to do it however I want to do it. That said, in the last video, I was addressing my 3 nieces and the dynamics that have happened, the dynamic in the relationship or lack of relationship that I have with any of my nieces. So I was addressing my youngest daughters, who are my nieces, obviously. But I was addressing them because she is the first and only phone call as of yet. It's like 2 something. I don't receive phone calls for my birthday. I don't make a big deal out of my birthday. And I'll get to that. I've cut so many people out of my life due to just a lack of authenticity and a lack of ownership and responsibility of the things that have transpired in my relationships. And I feel like I'm the one who's always pulling back and doing some reflecting and just looking at how I might have shown up and the things that I might have done to cause me to feel the way I was feeling, right? So never automatically thinking, well, they did something to me, right? It's always me questioning me. I'm not doing that anymore. So that's part of me cleansing my throat. That said, in the last video, again, I was addressing my 3 nieces and, letting them know how proud I am of them and where they're at in their walk on this planet. And hopefully, one day in this lifetime, not the next, because I don't plan to come back here in this next one. I'm doing what I need to do now to clean that up, so hopefully it can get me to the next level where I want to be in this thing we call the Matrix. I don't know if it's going to be the Matrix in the next one, but who knows? I'm doing everything I can do right now to clear up my stuff because I don't want to come back here anymore. I know I chose to come here, and it's truly to do what I'm doing today on my birthday. One, regaining my voice, speaking my truth, not blaming anyone, but, definitely sharing my experience with people in my family. And really, I mean, I've stepped into it a long time ago and embracing where I'm at and knowing that I don't have a relationship with any of my siblings. And there are 4 of us, 5 of us who are living. One of my oldest brother transitioned some years ago, many years ago. Bless his heart. But he too was a victim of, you know, and I don't like using the word victim, but he was, and when you're a child up and it gets an adult, right, you are the victim in that situation. So we were victims in that situation. And so, yes, he's transitioned. And before he transitioned, I had an opportunity to, he had gotten into some trouble when he was a teenager. So growing up in the household that we grew up in, which was very volatile, very abusive, emotionally, physically, psychologically, spiritually abusive, sexually abusive. And so again, when a child, not again, when a child grows up in an environment like that, right, it impacts them in some kind of way. And so either they start to take on those behaviors, right, in any of those categories, all those categories in their relationships, and as they get older. And my oldest brother so happened to be, one um, who he became a victim, then became a perpetrator. Um, and bless his heart, I just wish that the time that it was brought to my mother's attention that things were going on in the household, that she could have gotten him help. But I was a child at the time. I was living in that fantasy world thinking that, oh, if we just spoke the truth like the Bible said, because that's why we're going to church every Sunday and Saturday and Wednesday and Friday and Thursday. Like, that's why we're in church and we're learning all this stuff, right? But it was only good for the church, never good for the household. Anywho, so he became a victim, and then he became what happened to him. And the first time that so let me back up. So with my oldest brother, none of us knew our only two of my mother. So my mother had six children, five are living, and out of six children, there are four dads, and out of those four dads, two of my siblings share one of those dads. And if I'm not mistaken, their dad, the oldest, so my oldest sister and my second oldest brother, their dad has always been in the picture. That was my mom's. I don't know if it was. I think it was her first love, right? She had a first child by him, so something tells me that was the first love, um, or not. Who knows? But he was always that one, even to this day, that can go and lay up in her bed. Whether they do things or not, it's not my business. I just know that for sure. Um, and so that's the kind of relationship that he's always been there. He almost lost his life one night in the kitchen. Um, I'm so glad we healed. I'm healed. But yeah, he almost lost his life one night. And that goes back to that pack mentality. Not that we wanted to beat the man up, because really he was just like, none of our dads that I can recall. And I don't know about my oldest brother. I don't know about his dad, and I'm going to get back to that. But none of us that I know of have ever been physically, well, I can't say that. My twin was physically hurt by our dad. And that was like maybe the second, third weekend of us ever, meeting him and then being thrown in his household. And yes, he definitely, my brother has a scar on his back to this day of my dad um, um, abusing him. So anyway, back up to my oldest brother. Um, so he didn't meet his dad until he was like 12 and a half, 13. He might have been 14. So we're going to say we'll just say between 12 and 14, he met his dad for the first time. Um, and I think he might have been 14. So anyway, he meets his dad, and mind you, we've never met his dad. I still don't. I couldn't tell you what his dad looked like. I couldn't tell you anything about his dad. So anyway, he met his dad for the first time at, we'll say, 14. Now it's not like this man lived in the state that we lived in, which was Oklahoma at the time. And I don't even know how my mom, she must have been doing some type of research or having someone looking him up or whatever, who knows. Maybe she was trying to get some type of financial assistance from him after all these many years. Who knows? Anyway, all I know is that there's talk of my big brother is getting ready to go to Spokane, Washington to meet his dad for the first time. Okay, first time. Now, mind you, my mom is not traveling with my oldest brother to go and meet his dad for the first time in Spokane, Washington. What happens is that however my mom um, cre- hooked up the situation where my oldest sister at the time was home visiting us, and I'll get to her story. So anyway, my oldest sister was home visiting us, and so she was going to be the one to make sure he got to Washington or was able to get to the, what am I trying to say, off at the stop. You know how Greyhound, right, have all the different slots and you connect to other places depending on where you're going. Well, I think that she was just making sure he got off at the bus stop he needed to get off of before Denver, because she was headed back to Denver at that time. And mind you, she was only, so if he was 14, she had to been around, he might have been a little older, might have just been a little older. But she's only a year older. My oldest sister's only a year older than my oldest brother. So she had to be about maybe 15, 16, 16, 17, because I think she was 17 when she, yeah, 16 when she moved to Colorado to live with my uncles. Like I said, we'll get to her story. Anyway, he meets his dad for the first time. He goes for the summer and he meets his dad. Now, all I remember during this time is that he would call home, and he would call home like on Saturday nights, and that's the time we were watching America's Most Wanted. Um, but you know, Mama always took his call, and I just recall him crying, and you know, asking and you know, saying how he wanted to come home. He just wanted to come home. And we all have. I recall several stories of at least a few of my siblings that we've cried to come home from a place that she sent us to live. And I'll get to my twin and I's experience. And anyway, so he's crying. He wants to come home. Well, summer's over. He finally comes home. And I don't even think, I think he was maybe there for a few weeks, felt like forever. But when he came home, he was different. When I say different, of course, you know, with all my training now, I get and understand why he was different and the things he was doing. But I truly believe that he had already been sexually abused before he went to visit his dad. I just think that when he went to visit his dad, it took it to a whole nother level. Because when he came back in the household, he was a different type of kid, like brother, right? To the point where I remember one day, I just had to tell him, like, if you ever try to touch me again, right, it's going to be problems. And I think I said it exactly like that. And he never tried to touch me again. And so um, I knew because he didn't have that behavior, and we were all teenagers. We're, like I said, my oldest sister, she's 4 years older than I, and it goes 4, 3, 2, 1. And again, there's six of us. So I never experienced that with him before. You know, he went to visit his dad. So anyway, there was a little girl at the time that would come and visit our family before my mom finagled um, and talked her mother about her paternal rights, maternal rights of her own children to several of her kids to come and live with us. Well, during that time, when this child started to come over to our home, she was a, you know, just a happy kid, you know. I think she was like maybe 2, 3 when she first started coming over. And again, my mom have been friends with her and her sisters and or her parents or whatever. It's Oklahoma. So anyway, they would hang out, and um, there was something about the little person's energy that changed right before my eyes, and I just picked up on something. One, I'll get to my story, but to kind of tie this in, I had been sexually abused in the household I should say, by family members, and touched a couple of times by my mom's quote male friends. Um, and like I said, we'll get to some of that. And again, I'm having this conversation to clear my throat so that I can have a voice, and so to get just kind of some of this stuff out. Because I'm hoping that my nieces, I'm like, for what is the point? The point is that I'm hoping that my nieces see these videos that I'm putting out, because they need to understand the dynamics, and they know some of this, but hopefully they can start to tie the pieces together and understand why there's such a divide in the family, why there are people who isolate and hide, and because we don't tell the truth, and we live in the shame, and I'm no longer living in the shame. And even though I have the mask on today, this is because I'm celebrating all of who I am. So this is like my teenage-ish side, these masks, because I like to create things. I'm an artist in some type of way. Anyway, so I noticed that the little girl's behavior started to change, and I one day pulled her aside, and white people, and I get to them at some point today. But so there was two white folk that I remember, and one I remember vividly because she got us into a whole bunch of activities, and I thank God for her. But the last names were the Hunzikers in Oklahoma City, and if you know, you know the Hunzikers. So anyway, they would like sign us up. Well, one of their daughters, Elizabeth, would sign us up for my mom, for these Santa Clauses thingy for kids and all that. So anyway, that's how we, start collecting all these like Barbie dolls. And I've never liked Barbie dolls. I do not like Barbie dolls, even to this day. But so I had these Barbie dolls, and I had them in a container underneath my bed. So I pulled the container out, and I pulled these two Barbie dolls out. And I have the little person to come into my room and sit on my bed. And I'm just like trying to, I think at this time she has to be about four, she has to be about 5 or 6, no more than 6. And so I'm sitting there on the bed, and I give her a doll, and I'm so busy paying attention to her face at this time that I'm not paying attention to her little hands, even though I told her I gave her the dolls. And mind you, I'm like 12 years old at the time. And so, so yeah, so this is before he went to visit his dad, them. So anyway, um, what was I saying? So anyway, I give her these dolls. She's sitting on the bed, and I'm paying attention again to her face and not her hands. So I say to her, you don't have to tell me who's doing anything to you. I said, but show me what they're doing to you, and you won't get in trouble. I've learned over the years in my profession that you don't make promises to children, and especially when it comes to disclosing any type of abuse. And again, I was a child myself, and of course, I didn't have the training at the time, and I didn't know that she would get in trouble for telling me. And part of that is my fault. So I'll tell you how it went down. So finally, I'm realizing she's rubbing one of the baby dolls between her legs, and I don't know. At 12 years old, like something just shot up in me again. I had already been, experiencing sexual abuse, and I'm just like this is not right. Like this is not right. So I get up. Well, she's crying at this point, and I'm just like, don't cry, it's okay, you don't have to cry, wiping her tears, and I tell her to go to the back porch, because at the time, the back porch was converted into like a little bitty room for her. So she goes in, and it wasn't like a back porch, my mom would take care of other people's kids better than she would take care of us. She would treat other people's kids better than she would take care of us. So trust me when I say the back porch, it was a back little room, like one of them sun rooms, but it was turned and transformed into her bedroom. So anyway, as she goes to her room, and I dry up her tears, and I put my baby dolls back up, and I'm just like, how am I gonna like do this? And I said, I was like, I'm gonna die today. Why did I say that at 12 years old? because my mom had a habit of pulling her gun and pointing it to my face or to my head, and then she would always threaten, say something like, "Go get, call one of my siblings, more so my second oldest brother, go get my piece out my car." There was an intimidation factor because she knows I don't like guns. Um, so anyway, I'm like, I'm gonna die today. Like, I don't care. Like, she don't love me anyway. You know what I mean? The way she treat me, the way she let these, my siblings treat me, she don't love me anyway. So there was a rule with my mom that you would have to, when you enter her room, like most black families, you just not entering people's rooms, at least not your mama's rooms, your parents, or in my situation, my mother. So, we always had to knock on the door before we went in. And so, but this day, this day, like I was fed up like this day. And I was willing to die this day. And mind you, I was a quiet girl growing up, right? Child. Like, I didn't rock the boat, but the boat always seemed to get rocked. And not because I was rocking it, because they were rocking up inside my head. So anyway, um, so I just go to her room and I'm standing at her door and I just open up the door. Like, I don't bust in, but I just like open it up forcefully and I say, "You know what? You need to do something about your son because he's touching on," and I say her nickname. And I just knew in that moment she was just going to jump up out that bed. Not that she was going to jump up anywhere, but she was going to get up out that bed, and she was going to have all my siblings to get me. And she was going to come with her gun, and she was going to come with that little strap that she used to beat us with, the stitching cord, the switch, whatever she can get her damn hands on. The board from underneath the bed, right? Yeah, well, it's gone that far. So I was willing that day. I was willing to give it all up that day for this little girl because it's just like it wasn't right. But again, I knew something was going on with him too. But we're teenagers and we're not getting that kind of help in the household, and no one's having that conversation. So I then start to walk back to my bedroom, me and my sister's room, which is in the front part of the house. Guess what, guys? I'm still here. First of all. Second of all, she never came out the room. The whole rest of the day, she never came out the room. And I didn't realize how powerful that was until later on, until the therapist pointed it out to me. And I was thinking, oh, okay. But from that moment on, it really set some things in motion. Because around this time, some other things were going on. Like, my mom was like, um, she had outed me before this, and so I'm wondering, like, was there some tension at 12 years old? As I look back and think back, like, was there some underlying tension and me being frustrated to something she had said to me weeks prior? I don't know, and I'm gonna get to that story because that's a really important story of my life and how and things that shaped me in my life, and it has to do with one of the an African American woman who was executed in Oklahoma for murdering two of her girlfriends back in the 80s. So anyway, she never comes out the room. So I escaped another day. So I thought. So anyway, that conversation, then all I heard as I'm making my way into the French glass doors of my bedroom, my sister and I's bedroom. And mind you, one side stays shut all the time, but the other side, I just open it up and I'm walking in, and I could hear her call the little girl, and all I heard her say is, "Get your ass in here and sit down. You don't need to be, and stay out the boys' room, and you don't need to be in there anyway." And you talking about someone who, when I say I was PO'd, because I'm sitting here thinking, why are you going to blame her? She's the kid here. Like, they're both kids. He's the older kid, and something is going on with him, but you're too busy up in your world. You know what I mean? Because anyone who had a mother growing up then and was a young person. What, my mom was 18 when she had her first. She was 23 when she had her last child. 23, 24, 24, I think. Yeah, when she had her last child. So she was having us back to back to back to back to back. And so yeah, she was in them streets and doing her thing. So anyway, that behavior with my brother escalated. So when he was in high school and he got hit by a semi, and thank God, like it only that we remember messed up his foot. Because I don't know if it was there was so much abuse before his sexual abuse that was already going on in the household. Just with my mom and her abusive and narcissistic behavior. Um, he had got hit by a semi, and I was actually at the dentist office. She was at the dentist office with me. I was the last one. I was always the last one to get glasses, to get my teeth cleaned or fixed. So I was the last one, and I was getting my teeth filled. And as a matter of fact, when she got the call, the dentist was just finishing up this side, and he told my mom, he said, "I only have two more. Let me get the two more." And she told him, "No, I have to go now. My kid has just been hit by a truck." And so we left. I never got my tooth. And as a matter of fact, my filling over here just fell out recently. So I got to go get that refilled. So there were three he put in. And when I think back, we were kids and mama was on the system. I don't think any of us needed cavities because we weren't allowed to eat sweets, drink sweets, um, none of that. So I just think that definitely, that was a money grab for him to see a young woman with six kids. Oh, we all need glasses. Oh, we all need fillings. Come on, dude. So anyway, we leave. We get to the hospital. He's, definitely in pain and all that. But I just remember my mom not being very nurturing. She was never very nurturing to us, right? When we would get hurt or anything like that. So anyway, 2 weeks after high school, he moved out. He got his settlement from the car accident, and that set my mom off because we had a cousin that lived in the back house. I might have that conversation, maybe not today, but I will have that conversation eventually. So anyway, he basically, you know, the brother went through a lot, and going through what he went through. I'm telling you, 2 weeks after high school, I don't even think it was 2 full weeks after high school, he moved out the house. And with his settlement money, he went to the projects, and they really weren't the projects at the time. And they still stand to this day, and even to this day, they still don't look like the projects. So anyway, he got himself a one-bedroom over there. He enrolled in the community college, Rose Community College, I think it was at the time. And I was like really proud of him, and thinking, oh, hey, this is great. Well, my mom, shortly after, maybe like a year after, she puts me out the house. No, it's probably about, at this time, it's about 2, 3 years. Yeah. Then she puts me out the house. And like I said, we'll get to all that. But anyway, for the sake of this segment, this little that spiel I'm trying to get out. So she puts me out. And the same day, she puts my twin out. And I know that was being out of spite because she knew that there would be, at least one of her friends, if not two of her friends, but at least let me come and, take a shower, maybe have a meal or whatever, as I'm trying to figure out at 14, 15 years old, what I'm going to do with my life while I'm trying to finish high school. So anyway, we do get a hold of so we got put out on a Saturday. Today's Saturday on my birthday. So anyway, we got put out on a Saturday, and I remember thinking like, you know, we need to get in touch with my brother. We need to find my brother. And again, then and now, my sense of direction it gets off sometimes. So we eventually, like a week after, couch surfing and trying to stay out of the elements of Oklahoma during that some time, um, the heat, in other words, we basically finally got in touch with our cousin who lived in the back house, who I think helped my brother get his apartment. And somehow my cousin, by the grace of God, I don't know if it was my cousin or whoever, I really do think it was my cousin. And if not that cousin, another cousin, who helped my brother then get a 3 bedroom apartment. So once he realized mom had put us out the house, he upgraded his 1 bedroom apartment to a 3 bedroom. So now me, my twin, and my oldest brother, we're all living together. I'm getting up going to school. My oldest brother's already graduated high school. But my twin, he's getting up pretending he's going to school, but he's not going to school. So I eventually got a job. That's another story. So I was working illegally underage at 15, but I was turning 16 shortly after, so they were willing to hire me. Um, but I would come home from school before I got this job because it wasn't long after I got a job after mom put me out. But I would come home from school and the house would be full of little kids, you know, um, and it just would always make me uncomfortable. Like, cause I was in a household with you, and I know what you were doing with that person, that little person, and so to be honest, like I didn't really, cause he's my oldest brother, right? He's like a year older than I am, so I don't 2 years older than I. So it's kind of like, do I say something? Do I not say anything? But I would always just go up to my room and shut the door and just talk shit underneath my breath. Like, I can't believe you got kids in this house. And then just one day I came home and I just got this really sick feeling in my stomach. And I just said, I told all the kids, get out and go home, go home, go home to your moms, go home now. And when I say they scattered out that back door, they scattered out that back door. And I stood there and I told my brother, if I ever walk in this home again, this apartment again, and I see kids, I'm calling the cops on you. I said, I don't care if you're doing anything or not. I'm calling the cops on you. Do you understand? He was like, yes. Okay. I mean what I said. I bet not. Now, I don't know during the school day, if he had any kids over there, but I know when I got home, there were never any kids in that place again. However, when you live in the projects, you know what I mean? And I hate to call them the projects, that's what they were called, 36 apartments, 36 in Prospect, is where I lived. And so there were a lot of young mothers over there, and we supposedly had family over there, and they had kids. And so my brother became the babysitter, right? Um, he became the babysitter for all these single moms who just wanted to go out to the club and hang out. And even though the club was never far from, because Oklahoma is Oklahoma. So most of the clubs, even from the projects, you can walk to the clubs, even to this day, for those that are still standing in that particular area. So, um, so I just remember saying, like, you guys don't, like, y'all need to find someone else to babysit your kids. Like, find a woman to babysit your kids. Why you got a man, a boy, you know what I mean, babysitting your kids? Like, that's weird to me. Even then, I was saying that and telling these two particular people who eventually my brother did, you know, he wound up sexually assaulting, um, her child, her daughter, we know for sure. He was convicted with that. The other kids, I'm not sure, but I know that he had been convicted twice on on those allegations. And so the first time he was in, he had spent a little time in, and when he got out and got off of probation, my youngest sister, right, again, without having a conversation, moves him to the Springs, where he then begins to have that same behavior, right? And but this time, he almost lost his life in the streets because I hear the family members were really chasing him down. And if it wasn't for the store clerk to let him in and lock his doors to call the cops, to have the cops to come to arrest my brother, that was the last time that I yeah, that was the last really I heard of my brother until I got the call one early morning that he, was deceased, and he was locked up in jail at the time that he was deceased. And I'm bringing all this up because the behavior of my mother not stepping up and doing something. And again, people say, well, why you blame your mom? Because she could have, right? At the time, she was messing with the guy who was a psychologist, right? And so it's like, if the nigga don't do anything outside of laying up with you, right? Shit, at least let the nigga refer your son to someone that can talk to him about what's going on. But to do that, then would be for her to take ownership in the people that she have allowed around us, right? At that time. So sad to, like I say, he passed away. And when I heard he passed away, I was in a very abusive relationship at the time. So it really did something for me. And even though I went back to this person several times after that, in that moment, it gave me the opportunity to kind of break out and free from that relationship, because I knew I would have to travel back to Oklahoma City. Um, and I'll never forget. His going away, it was peaceful, but I realized it was only peaceful because nobody was really even talking about, not just what he did to other people's kids, but what he had did to some of his own cousins in the family, and that the women knew and no one said anything about it, right? And then, again, that started from my mom, and so I guess my only ask in having this conversation is share my business or share my brother's business, but it impacted the whole family. And, I always wonder if he was alive when I'd be talking about him. I would, because I wouldn't want anybody else to be hurt, and I would be calling him out and be monitoring. And if anytime he was around a kid, I would definitely go to the parent and let him know, you guys don't need to have him around your children, and this is why, right? And if they just did a background check on them anyway, they would find that information out. So anyway, my youngest sister, to this day, thinks that nothing happens. And again, I'm not bringing this up for her to have any shame and any guilt, but to take ownership that you had a role in that, because you knew his record, and because you and mama and all the other women were talking about he didn't do that, and no, he didn't do that. Even have a twin lying, he didn't do that. Really, really, y'all can lie, but I'm not gonna lie. And he did do that. And I realized that, even with me being perked on as a child, and just the impact that it had with me and how I interacted with just adults and children, like I was scared. And it thank God, thank God for this thing we call healing, and paying attention to and being able to articulate what's going on, so that if you see it and and it might hurt, that it is a family member, that you speak up about it. But anyway, he transitioned on, bless his heart. Um, I was able to forgive him, and I want to make that point. So when he was locked up the first time in jail, I remember writing him. Well, he would write me and, hey, send me some pictures, and I guess he forgot that, well, my family, because he was one of the first people. Like, so when I came out in high school, and I was out of mama's house, so I was obviously living with him. And so I came out, and I remember coming home from school, and I was like, yeah, I came out today, and he's like, what? And I say, yeah. And then shortly after is when I met my first girlfriend. So, but I think in their minds, because of how we were conditioned in the church and all that, it's wrong. So, even when he was in jail, mind you, I'm still a teenager. He would like send me pictures of you. There are some guys in jail, they want to see a picture of you. And I remember telling him, no, I won't be sending you any pictures. And I won't be sending you any more letters if you don't write me and let me know that you did, and you did what you did, and you know what you did was wrong. And I waited. And I got the letter from him. And he admitted to what he had done. And that's why I have respect for him and not my baby sister. Because even in that moment of him being in a cage, knowing that he had nowhere to go, and all his sister was asking was for him to tell the truth, and he told the truth. It allowed that door to be open, and allowed for me to send him letters in jail when he was locked up. And, so I corresponded, as much as I could with him. And I'm sure Mama got the, if he had ever held on to those letters, I'm sure Mama got them somewhere. So anyway, I was able to forgive my oldest brother. And even though we weren't ever like close, I love him. I will always love him. And I know what he did, was not right. I also know what he did was a learned behavior because no one wakes up and say, "Oh, let me do this." And I also know that the children that he was able to be alone with, right? Their parents didn't protect them, and their parents were selfish, like most parents are at that age. And so I know that things happened to him. And again, I'm not excusing his behavior, but when I talk about my brother, right, I talk about the little boy in him. I'm not talking about the grown man he was, because even though he was still a grown man in his body, and anyone who knew my brother, they can see that little boy. So sometimes I don't know, if he was autistic. Um, Even when I look at his obituary picture, sometimes I look at his face and I'm like, was he a little, I don't know. But anyway, he was a beautiful soul. He was beautiful outside and inside. And I'm just proud to say that, yes, he was my brother. And I was able to forgive him. And I hope that wherever his soul and his spirit is, that he's happy and, and he's free, you know, and that he's experiencing what love really is for himself, a self-love. And if there's anyone else around that's giving him healthy love. So thank you for the time that you were my big brother. And thank you for helping me clear my throat as I move forward to regaining my voice. All right. And in the next one, I think I'm going to talk about our oldest sister, the one that helped him get to that spot to then to be the next spot, and how she then, left the house at 16 years old. Um, and the dynamics that I have with her and my niece and nephew are the lack of, and my brother-in-law. So again, thanks for listening, and I hope the message that you got out of this was that no matter what people do, whether they're your family or friend, you can still hold them accountable and responsible for their behavior and their shortcomings. And you can also forgive them and continue to love them in grace and show them mercy all at the same time. And that's what I believe and hope that I was able to share with my brother